Hey guys, today I will be continuing what if Deku could use 100% one for all from the start. Last time we left off after Deku joining UA, and winning the Heroes vs Villains practical hero lesson. With news airing that All Might has joined UA High's faculty, the press Despite Eraserhead trying to send the reporters away, they try to follow him inside, activating the UA defensive barrier. During Class 1A's homeroom class, Shota announces that the class needs to elect a representative. The representative title is a chance for students to gain extra recognition, so nearly every student tries to elect themselves. Tenya speaks out and says that the class should put it to a vote, although the results are not to his liking. Deku is voted class representative, and Momo Yaoyorozu is chosen to be deputy representative. Later on, Deku, Akako, and Tenya sit together and have lunch in the mess hall. Deku is apprehensive about his ability to lead the class, but Tenya reassures him. Tenya even admits that he himself voted for Deku because of his intuition during the entrance exam. Noticing Tenya's formal attitude, Akako asks about Tenya's family and their wealth. Tenya hesitantly admits to being a member of the Ida hero family because he fears it will change how others view him. Their conversation is disrupted when the school alarms abruptly go off and a third-year student points out that this means someone has infiltrated UA by bypassing the defensive barrier. All students try to evacuate the mess hall at once, creating a major traffic jam in the outside hallway. Despite being caught in the panic, Tenya notices that it is only the media who have managed to trespass on campus. Drawing inspiration from his brother and Deku, Tenya comes up with a plan to calm everyone around him. He asks Yurika to make him float and then boosts himself onto the emergency exit board before yelling for the students to calm down. He explains that the infiltration is only the press, relieving the chaotic situation. The students return to class after lunch and Deku decides to announce his resignation as class president. Moved by Tenya's heroics, Deku nominates him as the replacement. The majority of the class agrees, and Tenya becomes the new class representative. When Deku gets home after training, Deku falls to his bed after a hard day of work, waking up in his dream in a void next to a line of unknown individuals. Instantly recognizing them as the vestiges of One for All. He then notices that most of his body is covered in a fog, and he's unable to speak and feel his legs. The vestiges disappear, and Deku is suddenly in the presence of a confrontation between All for One and his younger brother, the first user of One for All. The first user is trying to talk his older brother out of his criminal actions from giving and taking other people's quirks. All for One mocks his brother, and says that his actions are necessary in the growing quirk society. To demonstrate this, he materializes two individuals. One has a fang quirk that made him ugly and disowned by his family, and the other is quirkless, who was attacked by a gang of quirk users with no ability to defend himself. Against the first user's wishes, both ask All for One to do his work. The villain touches both of their heads, making the fang user quirkless, and giving the quirkless user an ability that made him grow root-like spikes out of his body. Both civilians thank All for One, and say they will help him if asked as a way of repaying for the villain's services. The first user tries to attack him for adding 2 more pawns to his collection, before an unknown bodyguard pins the former down. All for One tries to coax his little brother into aiding his efforts, saying that all he's doing is evening the playing field between those with and without quirks. The villain says he will continue his plans and cultivating his following, and forcefully gives his brother a quirk despite his objections. Izuku then gets sucked into a white void. The first user approaches him and says that he wants to show Deku more of the past, but notes he isn't strong enough to handle it. Deku and the first user reach out and touch hands, with the latter telling him it will be fine, and that he's not alone. Deku then wakes up in a cold sweat to the glass on his window cracked, and a rush of One for All's energy traveling through his hand. He then sends All Might a message condensing the dream, asking him if he knows anything about it, however he gets no reply. The next day later Mr. Eraserhead announces that the class will participate in a rescue exercise for their basic hero training class. He instructs the class to suit up and board a bus to head off to an off-campus location for the exercise. While riding on the bus, the students discuss each other's quirks. Zuyu notes that Deku's quirk is similar to All Might's, with most of the class agreeing. Not wanting his secret to get out, Deku stumbles out a reply, nervously laughing, stating that he has never really thought about it like that. Kirishima then goes on to say that he personally wishes for flashier quirk that would garner more fame, but Deku argues that his quirk is powerful enough to make him into a great future hero. But Kirishima still argues that his Bakugo's, and Shoto's quirks are perfect for becoming professionals. Zuyu Azue interjects, saying that Bakugo is too angry to become popular, irritating him. Denki Kaminari follows up, saying that Bakugo's personality needs work. Listening to the conversation, Deku notices that the tables have reversed since middle school. Now Bakugo is the one being teased by the class. After a while, they arrive at the unforeseen simulation joint, also known as the USJ for short. They are then given a small speech about the destructive capabilities of their quirks, so they must be controlled to save people. Suddenly a purple and black misty portal opens up in the plaza with a large group of villains exiting from it. Noticing them, Eraserhead takes charge, ordering 13 to evacuate the students and contact UA High. Deku has concerns about Shota fighting against the villains, but Eraserhead reassures him and leaps into battle. A firing squad sets their sights on Eraserhead, but he uses his quirk to cancel each of theirs out and knocks them out using his capture weapon. One of the villains quickly recognize him as the pro-hero Eraserhead and reveals his quirk before a mutant-type quirk-using villain confronts him. The villain knows Eraserhead's quirk can't cancel out his own and attacks, however Eraserhead easily counters him by keeping the villain at a distance using his capturing weapon. Back at the top, 13 directs the students towards the door to evacuate, however they are cut off by Kurogiri. He introduces himself as a member of the League of Villains and discloses that their goal is to kill All Might. Bakugo and Kirishima hastily attack him but to no avail. Before 13 can use her quirk on him, Kurogiri separates the class by warping them into the various simulation zones. Deku is transported to a water shipwreck zone with Mineta and Zuyu, managing to escape the water and take refuge on the boat. Deku then jumps into the air, punching the water, creating a massive whirlpool, sucking in all the villains. Motivated to also help, Mineta throws a ton of his balls into the water, sticking all the villains together. They then jump towards the shore. Meanwhile, Tenya manages to escape, running back to UA to get back up, with Shigaraki being informed. Upon seeing Aizawa fighting the villains, starting to get overwhelmed, getting attacked by the no Mew, Deku tells Zuyu and Mineta to hide themselves, while he takes care of the villains. Activating 100% One for All, grabbing Aizawa, beating up all the low-rank villains around them, giving Aizawa's battered body to Mineta and Zuyu, telling them to treat his wounds as best they can. Seeing Deku's speed, Shigaraki orders the no Mew to attack Deku, with it obeying, throwing a punch towards Deku, which he narrowly blocks, being pushed back slightly. Deku then punches the no Mew in the face, creating massive wind pressures, however it does nothing. Shigaraki then reveals that it was engineered to fight All Might, having shock absorption so his punches do nothing to him. Hearing this, Deku decides that he will have to try punch faster than it can absorb the punches going plus ultra, fighting evenly with the no Mew, punching each other all throughout the USJ. While fighting, Deku eventually starts to overwhelm the no Mew, starting to damage him, blowing of an arm, however it regenerates straight away. Seeing this, Deku realizes he will need to punch faster and harder, pushing his body to his limits, managing to pull more power from One for All, accidentally activating Black Whip, creating hundreds of black tendrils which attack in every direction, throwing the no Mew out of the USJ a few kilometers away. Despite already finishing the no Mew, Deku can't stop the black whips, being slammed around the USJ, trying his hardest to control the whips as to not attack his friends. Seeing this opportunity as the perfect time to escape, Kurogiri warps Shigaraki and himself away, hoping that Deku accidentally finishes off the job. Eventually Mr. Eraserhead wakes up, managing to activate his quirk on Deku, making the quirk re-enter his body. Due to the strain of the fighting and activating Black Whip, Deku collapses, falling unconscious. When he opens his eyes, he is surrounded in darkness and mist, inside the Vestige world, where he is met face to face with a large muscular man who he didn't recognize. Assuming he was a past user of One for All, the figure introduces himself as Daigoro Banjo, the 5th user of One for All, informing Deku that he had just activated his quirk Black Whip. Telling Deku that it is a good quirk, however his anger must be controlled while using it as the quirk reacts negatively to uncontrolled anger. He then feels a pain in his chest, pulling him away, realizing he doesn't have much more time. Daigoro explains that the quirk factors of all the previous wielders have been inside One for All for a long time, dormant, in the small core of the quirk. He says that this core has started expanding and growing larger and that the same is also happening to One for All itself. Daigoro also says that its strength has also been increased due to the power of One for All, and after he tells Izuku to do his best, and that all the predecessors are there with him and are supporting him, he vanishes afterwards. When Deku wakes up, he is in the recovery girl's office, with All Might waiting beside him. As soon as he wakes up, Deku asks if everyone is okay, and if all the villains were captured. All Might then explains that thanks to his and the teacher's efforts, none of the students were harmed, and shortly after he went berserk and fell unconscious, the teachers arrived, restraining all the villains still there. After confirming everyone's safety for Deku, All Might asks Deku what happened to him, with Deku explaining everything about his dream and how he is going to inherit 6 more quirks in the future. Curious, All Might asks Deku if he can still use Black Whip, with Deku attempting, however he couldn't activate it at all, theorizing that he locked the power away after it went berserk, not wanting it to happen again. All Might then informs Deku that he should probably fill out his side of the police report due to being the closest to all the villains, telling him that he will investigate the past users in the meantime. After finishing his paperwork, Deku finds Eureka and Tenya waiting for him outside the school and walks to the station with them. Being praised for fighting the villains so heroically and questioned about his other quirk, however Deku lies and tells them that he isn't quite sure about it. However, he believes that it isn't a different quirk, just another way of manifesting his strength, tangibly to attack with. Later that day, the news reports that UA High's Hero Course students were attacked by the League of Villains. It is reported that the criminal forces plotted on killing All Might. 72 criminals were arrested, but the leader escaped and his whereabouts remain unknown. UA is closed the day after the attack, and its faculty members hold a meeting with the police force investigator Naomi Suzuki, discussing the recent attack, with All Might revealing to those aware of All for One that he is probably still up and running, as the mastermind behind the League. Okay guys, this is the end of the second part of What If Deku could use 100% One for All from the start. If you enjoyed this What If, please consider dropping a comment, like, subscribing to the channel and turning on the notification bell to be notified about all What Ifs I upload. With this out the way, this is Demonic Saiyan saying bye.